PodcastCoug Season 4, Episode 13.
You're listening to the PodcastCoug Radio Network with your host, James Laurie. The PodcastCoug is your weekly Coug On Demand show featuring all things Cougs and Washington State Cougar football. And now, here is your host, PodcastCoug.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the PodcastCoug. I am James Laurie, the PodcastCoug, and you are listening to the PodcastCoug, where we're all things Cougar football. 30 minutes Coug Talk. We're talking about our bowl game, the Cheez-It Bowl in Air Force on Friday, and Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy New Year and Merry Christmas. And it's Christmas Eve, right? Oh my gosh, here we are. It's a busy week for everybody. Hopefully you got some time off to enjoy some family, friends, and everything. We got a bowl game on Friday. And again, Merry Christmas, everybody. Here we are. It's Air Raid against Air Force, right? Coug 6-6, 3-6 conference. Playing the Air Force for the first time in history. In Phoenix, Friday, ESPN, and this is going to be an interesting game, right? It should be interesting. Now, Cougs lose another Apple Cup against the Dogs. Gosh, don't want to talk about that one, but you know what? As long as Jimmy Lake's around and Leach is our head coach, we're predicting an AC loss every single year. I mean, Jimmy Lake's got our number, right? He knows, and Leach doesn't make adjustments. And it's so pathetic. It's so sad. It's embarrassing. I didn't even, I was at the game, right? Recorded it, DVR'd. I didn't even watch the game. And I haven't even watched it, the DVR recording. It's pathetic. And it's just so sad. We all thought it could be our year. But you know what? It is what it is, and we move on. But today we're talking Air Force 6-6. And you know what? One positive, it's after Christmas, right? From the standpoint, we get 15 practices in for the team. It's really beneficial to get all those extra practices, and it really helps develop players, right? Players coming up in the ranks, coming up next year, and figuring out the puzzle and who's going to work, who's got some leadership abilities and traits. But yeah, no, it's great to have the 15 extra practices. And I mean, you can't successfully build a program nowadays and compete at a high level if you're not getting that extra practice time. So it's really important to develop these young guys coming up in the ranks. And like I said, it's Air Raid against Air Force, and really great contrasts and styles, right? It should be a lot of fun. Obviously national exposure, big stage. Nobody's happy about our 6-6 season, really. I mean, we've got 5 in a row as far as bowl games, and that's something you can hang our hat on. But you really look back the year and see what, if the ball bounced just a few ways differently, if we just went a little, we had some close ones, right? We would have had 7 or 8 wins this year easily. But that being said, with all the transition that happened, with our DC and everything, and, Tracy Clays, and just the lack of, wow. I mean, let's talk about defense. I mean, it's recruiting, it's everything, right? So, I think that there are some good things and we can take advantage of, and especially if we beat the Falcons on Friday, we have a 7-win season. Slice it or dice it, it's 7 wins. So you look at the pre-Leach era, and we've gotten a little bit spoiled. Apple Cup aside, we can all agree that we've taken winning for granted, and here we are at 5 bowl games, right? So, developing the team and this bowl and the extra practices and preparing for 2 to 3 weeks, really it's just great. Also, there's, some quarterbacks next year that's going to come up. So, this is going to be interesting. Again, developing some of those guys that are going to be around next fall and spring, and the vision of 2020. It's really important. So we need to address the leadership, though, right? We've got another 5th consecutive bowl, like we said, but recently We've talked about captains and leadership and who's the team captain. It'd be really nice to focus on who's going to step up next year. Our bowl game has that opportunity with that, preparation, as we talked about, for our leaders for next year. And who should be that James Tiberius Captain T. Kirk, right, on their chest, right? Who's going to step up and say, I'm captain, I'm running the enterprise, right? It's really important that the next leader is going to be, we identify who that captain is. Somebody's got to have to step up. Great that Leach isn't going anywhere. It's great that he received his annual rollover, and which takes him out of the conversation of bolting or moving on or moving to another program, which is great. We're fortunate, thankful, big name coach. Like to see him around for another 8 years, another 10 years, right? But so. This is let's be honest though. This is probably Mike Leach's weakest staff, right? I mean, that he's had in a long time, especially on the defensive side for sure. So we've got to find that gem. We're looking for a defensive coordinator. Before, we need somebody to either step up, our current guys, or go out and find the right talent, a proven guy. Some people say don't bring in a Mountain West or a Big Sky or a mid-major. I don't care. Bring in somebody who's absolutely proven himself as a defense coordinator, that can recruit and can be a game changer. Somebody like an Alex Grinch, just a solid defensive coordinator. We need guys too, guys that are going to fly around, that are going to make plays, and we've got to recruit hard and smart, and we got to find those, whether they're 3 stars, which seems to be the trend all these years. We find some great guys that literally get overpassed or just, not looked at seriously. And, let's face it, we're not bringing in the 5 stars and the 4 stars, all every year in and year out. And so we probably do better and more with our, with who we bring in than probably anybody in the conference. There's no question about that. But we got to find the right guys, get the right guys on the bus, and so the bus is heading in the right direction. And so guys that are going to emerge and be playmakers and leaders, and we need that. We focus on the defensive side of the ball. We need a coordinator that's going to get guys to buy in on an identity at Washington State, right? Coach Grinch, Alex did a great job at that. He got his guys to believe an identity, a group of defenders to believe in a common, kind of presence and common theme. And, I think today we lack that identity, right? We lack the leadership and pitching the air raid as a potent offense, receivers, just potent weapons. But, what about recruiting on the other side of the ball? Not just an air raid power pack offense, but what about a strong defense? How about changing our mindset and bringing some guys in, bringing the right coach, the right staff, that we can focus not just on the air raid, not just on receivers, right? Well, let's bring some guys in on the other side of the ball that can really be playmakers and just emerge, right? So we need to go out and put a lot of time and energy and effort in. The coaching staff, they've got a lot on their plate. If we're going to be a successful contender year in and year out, especially in the future here, there's some, the competition is really brutal. I mean, look at some of these recruiting classes that these other schools, get. I mean, it's unbelievable. So, I think we do a lot at like I said, promoting the air raid, and we failed to bring in some talent on the defensive side of the ball. Not to say that our guys are not there, but they just need to be developed or get better guys. As simple as that. I mean, there's no question about that. And then there's another thing. The PodcastCoug is kind of, this my observation is to make the relationships, mostly everything in life is relationship driven. And those high school coaches locally in the state of Washington, is our current staff reaching out and making inroads and relationships with some of these key high school coaches, because if there's no relationship, think about this. They might send if they got a standout, meaning a high school coach has a standout on the team, and he's got some relationship with Washington or Oregon, but he has no relationship with Washington State. Unless he's an alum, we're losing out. We could be losing out. He might suggest to his, that kid, hey, go talk to so and so at the Ducks, or go talk to Washington. And I think we might be missing out just in our backyard here. So build those relationships with the high school coach, and local relationships, and I think it's essential. I mean, Jimmy Lake's going to be they're getting some kids, and we need to step up and not overlook the Pacific Northwest. Build those inroads and those relationships. I think we can do better, frankly, locally. So, hey, we're going to talk about number 24. It's the Air Force, the Falcons from the Mountain West, right here next, coming up in the second half of the Podcast Coug.
Hey, Coug fans. You're podcasting with James Laurie and the PodcastCoug Radio Network. The Podcast Coug is your weekly Coug on Demand show, featuring all things Cougar football in Washington State. To help you get through the week, hit the subscribe button or check us out on iTunes, the App Store, iOS, Google Play, Stitcher, or at podcastcoug.com.
Welcome back to the second half of the Podcast Coug. I am James Laurie, the Podcast Coug. We're all things Cougar football, all things Cougs. Merry Christmas, everybody. Cougs 6-6 and 3-6 in the conference. All we can say is Merry Christmas, right? And it's kind of exciting. This is going to be a short podcast here. It's a holiday week, and Christmas Eve, everybody's doing everything. We're heading out, and you're probably either wrapping presents or they're done. And boy, I'll tell you, a lot of fun stuff coming up this week. A lot of football too. Series, Air Force, and Washington State are meeting for the first time ever. That's amazing, right? So it's Air Raid against Air Force, and it's the Cougs versus the Falcons. Cheez-It 2019. It's 7:15. ESPN, the only disadvantage on the East Coast, that's a late bowl game on the East Coast. Hey, play-by-play for ESPN is Clay Matvick, but more importantly, it's our Coug Ryan Leaf. He's going to be the color guy for Friday's game. That's going to be fun with analyst Ryan Leaf on ESPN. Air Force, believe it or not, is playing its 27th bowl game. Are you kidding me? I mean, granted, they're in Mountain West, but hey, the Falcons have earned, bowl bid 10 times with head coach is Troy Calhoun. It's his 10th bowl game in 13 seasons. And so, their record is about 50-50 on bowl wins, 12-13 and 1. And under, Calhoun, they're 4-5. So marks the first time since 98 that Air Force is nationally ranked going into a bowl game. So, the 24th in both polls. Cougs are unranked, and first appearance on the Cheez-It Bowls, although they were at the Copper Bowl in 95, just like we were in the Copper Bowl, 1994, it was the Copper Bowl. It was back in Tucson. So they played the following year against Tech and lost to Tech. And so the Falcons are averaging 57 rushing attempts per game. That's a lot, 300 yards generally. And that puts them third nationally, only behind two other service academies, which are doing the same thing. That's Navy and Army. So pretty interesting on that. The diversity of the triple option is not necessarily a traditional balance, between run plays and pass plays. And, it's a variety of ways that the Falcons can move the ball, get their chunk 10 yards at a time. I mean, they perform. Terrific record. They're having a great year this year. And, they have played a Pac-12 game this year. We're going to talk about that. But quarterback Darnold Hammond, he's rushed for like 500 yards. He's got 11 touchdowns under his belt. He can run. The guy's mobile. Watch for him. He's, on the keeper. Hammond is a playmaker. 11 TDs this year. And they're playing, they're playing a Pac-12 bowl team for the first time since they taken on Berkeley, California, in the 2015 Armed Forces Bowl, actually. That was 2015. They played, Cal. They lost to Cal. And Air Force is 1-4 all time against Pac-12 teams. So we got a really good advantage here. Odds are. So they have only beat a Pac-12 team once in their 4 attempts. And that was, by the way, Washington Huskies. They beat the Dogs 45-25 in the I want to say Aloha Bowl, but it's Oahu Bowl on 1998. So, yeah. So it marks the second straight bowl game in Arizona. The Falcons defeated South Alabama in 2016. So, they've got a lot of bowl games under them. Keep in mind, it's Mountain West. We saw what the Huskies did to a Mountain West team, was it a couple days ago in their bowl game, Las Vegas Bowl. Air Force is going to be playing a Power 5 team for the second time this season. And, coming off against Pac-12, they did defeat the Colorado Buffaloes in overtime in Boulder. So Air Force is playing its 50th game against the Pac-12. Okay, so but they did beat Boulder, Colorado this year, and they're basically 19-28-2 against Pac-12 teams. So we've got a huge advantage. I mean, the odds are we'll be fine, but of course we say that we just don't know. We have no idea. But with this triple option, it's going to be very interesting. And so, they could literally end the season 11-2 overall, and would be the third most in their school history. So they had a great year in 85 and 98. So, 11-2 would speak volumes for the team and the school. And so anyway, they're looking for their 8th consecutive win, and which would literally tie their 4th longest winning streak in school history in Colorado Springs. So they would win their 2nd straight bowl game if they beat us on Friday. And out of the last 4, they've won. They'd be 2 in a row. So I don't know. Air Force. It's going to be kind of an interesting game. We're going to see what happens about that. Remember, we've got to be working on obviously a DC, developing those skills, players for next year. And this is going to be a great time for everybody. Especially it's great that it's Friday. It's after Christmas. Things are settling down. It's a great holiday weekend. A lot of people are off. It's going to be a lot of fun. Phoenix, the weather is always great down in Phoenix. Just absolutely incredible. So it's a lot of fun. Hey, this is the 4th season of the Podcast Coug, and we are basically over, right? I mean, it's here we are, And I want to thank you guys so much for listening, staying with us week in and week out, every episode during the football season. And gosh, have a wonderful holiday, Christmas. If you're Jewish, happy Hanukkah, and really have a great time with your family. Be blessed. God bless you. Let's go Cougs on Friday for the Cheez-It Bowl. Have a great Merry Christmas. Thanks so much, and God bless.
You've been listening to the PodcastCoug Radio Network with your host, James Laurie. The PodcastCoug is your weekly Coug on Demand show featuring all things Cougs and Washington State Cougar football. This has been a presentation of the PodcastCoug Radio Network. Find us at PodcastCoug.com.
T